Hello, dear listener. Thank you for joining in for Shadow Lullaby Part 2. Welcome back. Now, on a quick side note, I appreciate you having a little patience with me as I'm working my way through a dual ear infection. So if my voice sounds a little odd, you're not imagining it. At any rate, Part 2 is going to see us learn a little bit more about how the protagonist landed where she is and why she took the job. So, Shadow Lullaby Part 2. Through my bursts of consciousness and likely concussed mental state, my mind drifted back to how I had landed here in this bizarre land with its equally bizarre creatures and barbaric people. I had been thrown into this world from a spell that backfired. A magic user hired from a competitor of mine had decided to summon a portal-creating entity. They hadn't checked that they were over a major ley line convergence, and so the spell supercharged and exploded out through their protective circle, blew through my little New Age shop, tore a hole in the dimensions, and landed me in a bizarre place that had more in common with a Lord of the Rings novel than a sci-fi multiverse. I would find all of this out from one of the traveling mages that I encountered. I had been so dazed, but was still thankful that my small son had been with my mother at the time. I had been doing inventory of all things. Once I had gotten my bearings a little, I made my way to a village of sorts, and they had taken me in. It didn't take me too long to figure out how this world worked and to notice the differences. By my count, it was around a month's worth of moons before I had my feet under me a bit. Of course, I couldn't tell if there were days or nights matched ours, or if whatever dimension I had landed in, something I deduced myself, as there was stuff here that could have never survived on Earth, and the star position said it was, in fact, Earth, near as I could tell, had the same time system. I had no way of telling if I would return in the same time frame that I had come from. I knew I would find my way home, no matter what it took. I had a child to raise, and I would not see him raised by strangers because some idiot didn't do their research. So I researched and took odd jobs while I learned as much of the common tongue as I could. The village that took me in was named Shadow Lullabies. It had originally been named Blessed Moon, but it had taken on the moniker due to the monster that lived at the caves on the outer edges of its dense forests. That monster was something called a Yamasil. It was a half-elven, half-crystal spider beast. Normally, these things stayed away from everyone and just hunted large game for food. They were not naturally occurring, for the most part, but the result of some weird religious ritual, from what I had heard. And any religion that had the bright idea to merge anybody with a huge spider had my vote for worst religion ever. Well, almost ever. The creature had apparently gone mad and snatched infants and small children of many different races. The villagers closest to the forest edges could oftentimes hear the cries of the babies. It was a terrible sound, but the silence was so much worse. Some had tried to kill the beast. None had come back. To quell the random snatching of infants, races from all over the lands had begun bringing their unwanted babes, small children and even older children, to leave at the Yamasil's altar. It had made me sick, but there wasn't any way for me to do anything about it at that moment. I hated this barbaric world. For all of its beauty, it was a savage world. Then an odd job came my way. Someone wanted one of the unwanted children back, and they hired me to go get the kid. I needed the money, so I agreed. Even though I am an arachnophobe and was already terrified, it gave me an excuse to kill this thing and rescue some kids. I figured I could get them to an orphanage once I was done with this thing. And on top of it, I was going to get paid to do it. As it turned out, I was actually quite good at hunting monsters and fighting things. I had been a businesswoman back home, so I was surprised at how fast I ended up catching on to all of this. I ended up making a great mercenary. All of the other jobs in the village that paid actual coin were taken. Well, except for brothel work. My strengths were not in sheer muscle, but in cunning and strategy. And I made a name for myself quickly, which kept jobs coming my way and coins flowing in. The week before this job came my way, I had found out from one of the elder mages that I had contacted that while he had found my world, I had already been away from it for 200 years. Every month that passed in this world equated to a century in my own. My little boy was long gone. My heart had broken that day. I had sat staring at the wall of my hut once I had heard the news. I stared for a whole day and a whole night. Consciousness fluttered dimly at the edges of my mind. I felt hot tears stream down my cheeks. My little Ben would have loved it here. That was my first thought as I woke up, webbed to a smoothed wall in a different room of the cavern. I could tell I was deeper in the cavern because of the smell and the shapes of the rocks around me, and the odd warmth. Caves were naturally cool. And that is it for part 2. Tune back in for the last part of this story. As I said, this is one part, the beginning of a much larger tale. But the end of the first part will be coming in a few days. And thank you again, dear listeners. Stay shiny. Bye. See you next time.